Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're going to talk about something we live by every single second of every single day. But do we ever really think about where it came from? I'm talking about time itself. Yeah, the invention of time. Okay, just for a second, I want you to imagine something. Picture a world with no Mondays. No those things that run our lives, our schedules, our birthdays, our history, poof, gone. How would you even plan to meet a friend for coffee? Or know when to plant our crops? It's kind of mind-boggling, right? You know, for most of human history, time wasn't something you measured. It was something you felt. It was the rhythm of the sun rising and setting, the cycle of the seasons. It told you when to plant, when to harvest, when to celebrate. It was this deep, intuitive sense, not some number ticking away on a screen. So let's dive into how that actually worked. So a world without clocks. It sounds kind of peaceful, but also chaotic. How did our ancestors even start to get a handle on something as abstract as time? I mean, with no technology, no written language for it, where do you even begin?
Well, it turns out the very first clock wasn't something we built. It was something we just observed. Humanity's first big clue came from looking up, the sky. It was the original timepiece. You had these incredibly predictable, repeating cycles. The sun's journey across the sky, the moon changing its shape every night, the stars shifting overhead. These were the first ticks and talks of a giant cosmic clock.
So when it came to reading nature's clock, two things up there in the sky really stood out. And they gave us two totally different and sometimes clashing ways to count the days. Of course, I'm talking about the sun and the moon. So you kind of had two camps. On one side, you had the moon. Super reliable, right? Every 29.5 days, it goes from a new moon to a full moon and back again. Easy to track. So a lot of early calendars were based on that. But then you had the sun. Its journey took about 365 days, and that's what controlled the seasons, which, if you're a farmer, is everything. So what do, moon or sun? Well, this is where it gets really clever. Ancient cultures, particularly in India, came up with a brilliant solution. They basically said, why choose? They created something called a luni-solar calendar. It's a hybrid. It tracks the moon's phases for the months, but it also stays in sync with the sun's orbit for the years. To do that, they'd add a whole extra month, an Adhik Mas, every few years, just to make sure the lunar calendar didn't drift away from the seasons. Super smart. Okay, that all sounds really advanced, right? But how do we actually know they were doing this stuff? Well, they left behind the proof, and it is incredible. Think massive, ancient time machines, but forget gears and springs. These are built out of solid stone. I'm talking about places like Stonehenge in the UK or the jaw-dropping Konark Sun Temple in India. These weren't just random piles of rocks or pretty temples. Nope, they were unbelievably complex scientific instruments, engineered with pinpoint precision to line up with the sun on very specific days of the year, like the solstices. And get this, a pretty recent study from 2022 suggests Stonehenge is even more than we thought. It's not just about the solstices. It might be a massive functional solar calendar. The theory is that the stones themselves actually represent the 365 days of the year. It's like a giant permanent stone record of time itself. Wow. And then you have Konark. I mean, look at this thing. It's designed as a giant chariot for the sun god, and every part of it is a code for time. It has 12 huge wheels for the 12 months, 7 horses for the 7 days of the week, and each wheel has 8 spokes, which represent the 8 3-hour periods of the day called pahars. Those wheels are actually sundials. The shadows they cast told you the time. This isn't just art. This is honest-to-goodness time engineering. Thousands of years ago. Okay, so these natural, local systems were amazing. But as societies got bigger and started trading and communicating over long distances, things got complicated. A standardized system was desperately needed, and that kicked off a really messy, political, and super mathematical journey to get to the calendar we all have on our phones today. So the road to our modern Gregorian calendar was a long one. It really got started back in 46 BCE, when Julius Caesar rolled out his Julian calendar. But the whole idea of year one didn't come along until much later. And here's a fun little fact for you. There was no year zero. We just jumped straight from 1 BCE to 1 CE. Weird, right?
Now, the Julian calendar was pretty good, but it wasn't perfect. It had a tiny little error. It was off by about 11 minutes a year. Doesn't sound like much, does it? But over 1,500 years, that little error added up. By 1582, the calendar was off by 10 whole days. So Pope Gregory XIII had to fix it. His solution? In October of 1582, he just deleted 10 days. People went to bed on October 4th and woke up on October 15th. Can you imagine? 10 days of your life just gone from history. So why is our calendar even set up this way? Why 365 days? Why 12 months? It might seem a bit random, but it's not. The answer is literally written in the stars. Well, in the mechanics of our solar system anyway.
It all comes down to this cosmic clockwork. It's a three-part dance, really. First, the Earth spins once on its axis. That's our day. Second, the moon orbits the Earth. That gives us our month. And third, the Earth makes one full trip around the sun, and that's our year. Day, month, year. Simple as that. But there's a tiny catch. That trip around the sun, it doesn't take exactly 365 days. It's actually closer to 365 and a quarter days. And that little quarter of a day, well, it adds up. That's exactly why we have a leap year. Every 4 years, we tack on an extra day, February 29th, just to get our human-made calendar back in sync with the actual cosmos. So, here we are. We've built this incredibly precise system to measure and control every single moment of our lives. We've mastered time, right? But maybe that raises a bigger, more philosophical question for us. Think about it. We think we're the ones measuring time. But what if, in a way, time is now measuring us? Ancient cultures often saw time as this big, repeating cycle. Like the seasons, it came and went. It was something you experienced. But we've turned it into a straight line, a resource, something to be managed, spent, and saved. We're always trying to find more time. We've gotten so good at counting time. We've put it on our wrists, on our walls, and our pockets. But in doing all that counting, have we maybe forgotten how to actually feel it? Have we become prisoners of our own invention, living by the tick-tock of a clock instead of the natural rhythm of our own bodies and the world around us?
So here's a thought for you. The next time you glance at a calendar or check the time on your phone, just pause for a second and ask yourself, are you just counting time, or are you actually feeling it? Because behind every number on that screen is a spectacular cosmic dance, a rhythm that humanity has been trying to understand for millennia. And that's a story that's so much bigger than just